Two.
Hi, this is Starkie Sowers. Welcome again to another Clark's live not Instagram, but Facebook moment. So today what I thought we'd do is we just kind of spend some time in the tea room in Riverside. So we're going to kind of look at some different teas, and I'm always fascinated with the Camellia sinensis plant because there's so many uses that ends up happening with that particular plant. So that said, what's fun about it is this, real quick. You see that there's all different types of teas that are up here. By the way, I like this company, Choice. A couple different things since about 1989, I think it is. They're 100% organic. They've been organic longer than any other tea company that I know of on the market. They've been doing the organic thing way before anybody else. I'll show you a couple other cool things about them as we go along. But when we look at the teas, we see a couple different things. We see white tea, we see jasmine green tea, classic green tea, we see black tea, Darjeeling tea, English breakfast, some decaffeinated teas, some oolong teas, as well as typical like chamomile, peppermint, things of that nature. So when we look at this, we have a tendency to think, oh my gosh, there's so many different tea selections. So today what we're going to do is we're actually kind of like make things a little bit more simpler for you, all right? So number one, the Camellia sinensis plant grows in multiple different areas. First of all, it grows in China, it grows in Japan, it grows in India, a bunch of different places. And this is actually where we get what we call black tea, okay? And that's what most people are typically common with, or common knowledge for teas are. It's also the same plant that gives us green tea. It's also the same plant that gives us oolong tea, and it's also the same plant that gives us white tea. So I'm going to break that down and give you guys a little bit of reasoning so you understand what that's all about. So imagine this tree, okay, growing along first thing in the winter, about January-ish, maybe February. We actually pick the leaves, and the leaves themselves are just starting to bud or just starting to come open, right? And little tiny little baby leaves, and that's actually the Camellia sinensis plant, and that produces what we call white tea. All right. So what's cool about white tea, if you look at white tea, this is a nice little indication on how much caffeine is in here. The average cup of coffee is about 100 milligrams. When we look at white tea, and it's probably in that range of roughly about 30 to maybe 40 milligrams of caffeine. It's kind of a little hazy there, kind of gives you a little guideline on it. So the same plant picked later on in the spring is actually what produces green tea. Okay, and this is classic green tea. And what's cool about green tea is one thing to remember about these teas is they go through, their antioxidants kind of change a little bit as well as their caffeines, all right? So white tea is so famous for its high antioxidant capacities. So the other thing we see when we see green tea, all right, flip the page back over, maybe a little bit less in caffeine, roughly about maybe 30 milligrams to 40 milligrams. This particular one is India as well as a China variety. So what's popular about green tea, of course, is its antioxidant capacity. So remember, an antioxidant is something that protects the body against free radicals. Free radicals damage cells. We also know that those free radicals actually can damage the DNA as well too, and reduce the telomeres and increase aging. So that's what's so cool about green tea. It's packed with all different types of antioxidants as well as caffeine. A lot of people think, well, maybe caffeine's not a good thing. We do know something about caffeine. First of all, it's thermogenic, so it increases heat. It helps the body actually to burn more calories. But what's unique about green tea is it also has ECGCs in it, so real big acronym, ECGCs, ecogalactic acids, and what those particular things do is actually create thermogenic activity as well too. So we do know clinically there's a lot of studies about green tea. Using it on a regular basis actually helps the body to reduce the total amount of fat that you have. So great component to work with. So this is the typical green tea, all right? So then what they do is they can take the green teas and they can actually do one of two things with them. They can take green tea and they can put jasmine flowers on top of them, let them soak overnight, and then take the jasmine flowers off or actually leave them in it. So what you'll notice is this is jasmine green tea, all right? There's black green jasmine tea as well too, but the caffeine content ends up being roughly about the same as the green tea that we see. All right, so then same plant, going to be pick the leaves in the summertime. And so when we pick the leaves in the summertime, that's when we have oolong tea. So oolong is famous as well for weight loss and a few other different things like that. Great antioxidant, a little bit different flavor. A couple of things that happens with the tea leaf itself, it's actually starting to age through the year. And so the color's starting to go from like maybe a really bright green to a little bit more of a sandy, dusty green, so to speak. And so what you'll notice is the caffeine ends up being roughly about the same as well too. The only thing that's uniquely different about this is they actually partially ferment them. So they soak them and actually let them partially ferment, and then they actually process them after that. So this is a great summer tea, kind of cooling on the body. Excellent way to go. So then we're going to pick the same leaf now in the fall. And so what happens in the fall, as you guys know, the leaves change once again. They start getting darker in color. So when they get darker in color, we actually see that the catechin levels are changing and the caffeine starts increasing. All right, so here's a classic black. Once again, you'll see that this particular one's picked in India. The caffeine content starts to go up about 50 milligrams or better. So it changes a little bit stronger. Ultimately, we can do the same thing with the classic black, but remember that a classic black is fully fermented. So they ferment this for a couple, 2 or 3 days, so it has a whole different flavor, and that's where you get the black tea differentiation, so to speak. There's a couple different differentiations with the black tea. There's a Russian caravan tea. There's also Earl Grey. So what happens with the Earl Grey, it's the same black tea, but ultimately with that black tea, what they've done is they've added some bergamot oil to it. So it kind of gives you the classic Earl Grey. So very commonly used or consumed in English speaking areas, or English countries, not speaking areas, but English countries. And so that's where you come up with the English breakfast and a couple other different things like that. You can also get the decaffeinated versions, as well as some other different little tweaks, so to speak. And one of the tweaks that I like is this one right here. This is probably my number one tea that I really enjoy. Okay, this is a green tea. This one's actually been roasted. So that's what they call bancha and hojika. And so what's unique about this is not only does it have the toasted green tea in it, but it's also got maybe some of the little twigs in it as well. It gives it a little bit more robust flavor. The one that we're out of today that is actually my absolute favorite is twig tea. And so normally we have it, it's called twig tea, it's here. It literally only has about 5 milligrams of caffeine in it, a lot less, very powerful in its antioxidants, and that one is the one that I like to consume. So that maybe give you a little bit of information on when you come in to look at the different teas. Remember, it's the same plant. The twig tea, as I said, is literally the twigs. It doesn't have the leaves, it's just the twigs. And then the other ones, of course, are just picked at different times of the year and whether they're fully fermented or partially fermented. A couple things to remember, the caffeine content will change a little bit, so you might want to look at the caffeine content. The other thing that becomes important too is they all are very powerful and their antioxidant capacities as well too. So drinking tea is a great thing, lots of studies, lots of research on it. So it kind of gives you a little heads up on which one to choose.